So many moms feel stuck and isolated, like they've got to keep it all together and can't say how hard it really is. On Let's Get Real, we talk about the real stuff, motherhood, mental health, and everything in between, so you don't feel like you have to carry it alone anymore. Because in order to heal, we have to get real. If you're feeling overwhelmed, grab the Overwhelmed Moms Guide. It's totally free and made to help you feel like yourself again. The link is in the show notes. Let's jump in. Postpartum is often painted as a joyful, sacred season. And while it can be, it can also feel overwhelming, confusing, and emotionally heavy in ways that many moms don't expect. For Christian women, that tension can feel even deeper. They love their baby, they love God, and yet they feel anxious, overstimulated, disconnected, or even ashamed for not feeling the way they thought they should. Today, we're joined by Emma Donaldson, a licensed professional counselor trained in Christian counseling who specializes in perinatal mental health and trauma. With nearly a decade of counseling experience, she owns a private practice and is the founder of Joyful Mama Mental Wellness, where she supports Christian mothers outside of the counseling room through supportive resources and community for the postpartum season. She is passionate about walking with women through one of the most vulnerable and often least understood seasons of their lives. Emma is also a wife and mom of 3 and lives with her family in the metro Atlanta area of Georgia. Emma, thank you so much for being here today. I'm very, very excited for this conversation and getting to talk with you about this important season of postpartum, all the things that take place, but it's just not talked about enough. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, can you share about your own postpartum experience and how it led you to the work that you do today?
Yes, absolutely. So I was a therapist at the time that I had my first child and got to experience postpartum for myself. At that time, wasn't primarily working with pregnant or postpartum women, was primarily actually working with trauma survivors and doing that work. And I noticed I would have these things, these obsessions or these thoughts, have these little, call them quirks, having to sleep with the monitor all the way on, not have it be sensitive to the sound, right? But literally just be on. I was falling asleep to the sound of my son's sound machine in his room on the monitor, making sure that he's breathing, assuming that he's not breathing unless I go in and check. There were these little things that I would do. And I felt while I loved being a mom and loved having him, and it's one of the most beautiful pieces of life to experience, it came with this heaviness and this weight to do it right, to do it perfectly, and to have this reassurance that things were going okay, wanting to prevent anything bad from happening to him, and that extended to myself and the rest of my family. And so what I can now name as postpartum anxiety. At the time, I thought that was just how it is. And when I would share with some of my other mom friends, they would tell me similar things that they were going through or feelings that they had. And I felt that way too. But then that was into the conversation and started bouncing off some of the ideas with my therapist friends who were parents. Some of them had been parents for years. Some of them had kids my age. And they were like, oh yeah, envisioning your child falling down the stairs. I'm like, yeah, what is that? That's terrible. They're like, yeah, that happens. And I was really scared about it. I didn't tell anyone either. And here they are 20 years later. And so I just kept thinking this can't be how it's supposed to be. This can't be the design for it. There's got to be, if I were pulling back the lens, I would say this looks like anxiety based on my own clinical judgment. But why is it that when it meets postpartum and parenthood, it's somehow normalized to maybe not be a big deal? Or yes, it's highly distressing, but this is just part of it and you have to white knuckle your way through it. And so working with my own counselor, who's phenomenal and helping me, reminding me of coping skills, work through some of those thoughts and fears and anxieties. I also started to do just a little more research around why isn't this talked more about more, especially in the mental health field, but just in general, why isn't this talked about more? Started looking for trainings. How can I get my hands on some CEs that are going to help me be a better clinician for when I do have young parents in my counseling room? And so that's what led me to get certified in perinatal mental health. And that opened up a whole new world of things, learning about the different mood disorders that a lot of postpartum women and pregnant women are vulnerable to, that oftentimes get missed by their providers and chalked up to, well, this is just how it is, or they're put on medication, but they're not given any sort of coping tools or skills or support. And then they just roll right into the next couple years of having this child and thinking that was the best that we could do for me.
Wow. Yeah. I'm so glad that you've taken the dive into this work and being able to just hear kind of the backstory of this, because I do, that's been my experience similarly as far as like talking. It took a lot of courage for me to like speak up and share and say like, this is what I'm really struggling with. And even like when I was pregnant with my daughter, so I had my son and he was about 2 at this point when I was pregnant with my daughter, towards like the end of that pregnancy. And there was this very scary period of time. It was lasted 24 hours, but I had this literally like suicidal ideations. And with, you know, my background in marriage and family therapy, like I knew I was trained in this. So I knew like, I don't actually want that, but this is terrifying. And I called my doctor, who I, you know, couldn't get a hold of at that time. I told my husband, I was like, you cannot leave me alone. And go take all the knives and hide them, because like I'm terrified by these thoughts that I'm having. And it did last for a 24-hour period. But like when I shared, I felt like I couldn't really tell anybody until I could breathe. I'm like, okay, thank God that's over. Yeah. But when I did share, and it was in a Christian group, I was met with the shoulds, like, or just being like, hey, here, slapping a Bible verse on it. Like, this is what you know, just like think on these things, or God works all this together for good. I'm like, that actually feels like you're trying to silence me. And it's been very hard. It took so much courage to even express and say out loud, this is how I'm struggling. And then when I was met with that, it felt like a lot of shame. Like, oh, I shouldn't be struggling with this. What's wrong with me? When the reality is, I think that's what can be so hard in the Christian like faith communities, when we go through these very real human experiences where we're struggling, like we are deeply struggling. And yet for some reason we think as Christians, we should be able to have it all together. We shouldn't be struggling. There's something inherently wrong with us if we are, and if we have these problems. Then it keeps us from reaching out and telling God about it. It keeps us from sharing with other people. And then the weight of that just builds and builds. And we wonder why we don't feel better, we don't get better. And then it just comes out in these crazy ways. Instead of like normalizing and saying, unfortunately, like part of being here, this is part of the human experience for some of us. And all of us will struggle to some degree in different ways. But just realizing that that was a common occurrence, right? But it doesn't have to stay that way. And we can actually move towards health and healing, but it's through connection. It's through sharing with each other. It's like there's these paths of getting there. And so I'm really excited to hear more about the work you're doing now, and just even what you've seen working with clients. And these common traps that they fall into, the things that keep them stuck, all of that. So, and I would also love to hear what, from your knowledge and background, just how you would define postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, and how that may be just different than you're adjusting into motherhood or parenthood.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I'm so sorry that that was your experience, and that's how you were met when you were in a very vulnerable state. And so brave of you to share and be like, hey guys, this is what I'm going through, and believing the best about the women that were there, and they're thinking that they're helping, they're thinking that they're encouraging you, that they're being Christ. This is the right answer. I think sometimes comes from just the lack of practice, knowing how to sit with somebody, how to sit with them and feel what they're feeling in an empathic way. I'm so sorry. That's so scary. How are you feeling now? What do you need? How can I show up for you? That's really, it sounds like what you needed and what you were looking for. That is. Not to be fixed, to be managed. And the scripture piece is so tricky, because you'll have women who say, look, that's the way you encourage someone, is to share truth back to them. That's something I hear a lot, share truth back to them. And yes, that is, the truth is still there. It's still valid. It's still important. It's still helpful. And scripture also calls us to be discerning and wise. And you can give a right answer and it be the wrong time.
Right. And not what they need. That's not what they needed. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't get any brownie points for saying the right thing and being tone deaf, because you didn't meet the person where they were. That wasn't loving, right? Even if it was intended to be. And so I wish that I've not heard something similar to that, but I have. I've heard it a lot, and it does make especially Christian women feel stuck and trapped and isolated. And so they give the answer of like, yeah, I'm fine. Things are fine.
Yes.
They don't feel like they have permission to ask for help. So, yeah, happy to share those definitions, but I did just want to respond to that because that's huge and it's not talked about enough. And even just you sharing that with me now, and maybe a new mom is hearing this and she's like, oh my gosh, the exact same thing happened to me. I'm hearing like, this is common. It's scary. It's awful. It's an intrusive thought. It was unwanted, which is why you were so horrified by it, which is why you told your husband about it. You were like, hey, what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen? Right.
Yes.
And even knowing that women are prone to intrusive thoughts, maybe more so when they're postpartum, if that's not something they experienced before.
Right. That's so true and so good. And I think it's reassuring to hear that you've heard multiple other clients that you've met with experience something similar. And I think you point out something so key in that we really do have to learn how to sit with people, because what they may be needing, and this is, I know what I really needed, was to just feel heard, listened to. I needed a space. It was almost like somebody creating a container for me to just be able to share as honestly as I needed to without judgment, and someone just to sit and hold it, like create and hold the space and be like, I am so sorry. That is really hard. That is terrifying. I'm no wonder you've been feeling this way. Like that is what I needed. But we have to learn and practice how to do that. You know, it's just too often we can get we feel uncomfortable hearing those things. So we're like, oh my gosh, what do I do to try and ease my own discomfort instead of being like, what do they need from me right now? And how can I just be here with them? So
yeah. And recognizing that them showing up and being a good friend to you doesn't make them responsible for what you're feeling. It makes them being present, and they get to manage their own stuff on their own while being present with you. It's not like now I've got to take Jenna's stuff and now I have to problem solve or fix it. And that's, I think you said it beautifully too. That's the practice piece of, I think we are not well versed in the practice and the art of sitting with, empathizing with, not rushing to fix, not always having the right answer, feeling very uncomfortable when there's silence, feeling like we have to fill the space with something. And oftentimes it's less complicated, I think, than we sometimes think, right?
Yes.
It's hard, but it's not complicated.
Right. That's a very good point. Yeah, it can be simple even though it's hard to do, because for so many of us, we have to learn it, or we learn these other ways of going about it. And I think just what you said, the power of presence, of another body, that the withness, feeling I am not alone in this. And having another person, even if they've never experienced these same things, but they can just sit with me, where I'm like, I'm not on my own. I don't have to carry it all by myself. Because when I have felt like that, when I've felt like I can't share and I have to keep it all in and it's all on me, the weight of that is so heavy. And what we need, when the power of somebody just coming in, it's like I get to offload some of this where it's also on their shoulders, and they can leave and not have to take all of that on.
Yeah.
But it's just sitting with and being like that is incredibly powerful. I don't think we realize it until we've gotten to experience that.
Absolutely. Both, I think, on the receiving end and then the giving end too. Being able to receive that of, I don't feel alone in this anymore, even though someone may have not experienced it. And then being able to give that to someone and watching their shoulders drop and watching them get to cry and exhale and get it out. But you can visibly see they look like they feel a little lighter.
Yes.
And I didn't fix anything for them. I just got to be with them and love them where they are. So I think postpartum is one of those places where it is so important to press into community and not be in isolation. And also you have to have the safe people to do that with, so that you don't feel like you have to go back into the isolation. You asked earlier about postpartum depression, anxiety, and what some of that looks like. I think that the first thing to notice is hormonally, so much happens right after that baby comes out. It's the biggest hormonal drop of a woman's life. And there's so much biologically happening. I like to think of it as like there's little bells and whistles on the inside of us happening and levers being pushed and pulled. And no one can see that, but by God's beautiful design, that's what's happening on the inside. What the outside, what that often looks like is frequent crying or feeling like you're on top of the world one minute, you can do anything, and then feeling like I'm so ill-equipped to care for myself, let alone this small person. If it's not your first child, second or third child, how am I going to do all of this? 2 feels like a lot, 3 feels like a lot. So self-doubt is a big one that a lot of women will notice this first couple weeks right after the baby comes out. Just not feeling like yourself. Like, who am I? What version of me is this? Like, yes. I'm having thoughts I don't really recognize, or I'm craving foods that I really wouldn't want, or I want my husband to be close. Now I want him to go away. I want visitors. I don't want visitors. So for those first 2 weeks, I want to say it's like 80% of most moms will experience what we call baby blues. And while it can feel really disorienting, it is pretty common. It's after those first couple weeks, if some of those things persist, that we want to keep an eye on them, because it could be developing into a mood disorder. And typically people think, they might even say, oh, I had postpartum with my first or with my second. What they're really describing is a mood disorder, and most are describing depression. But I love to explain depression and versus like what it looks like versus what it actually is. A new mom might hear it and be like, oh, that might be something I'm struggling with. Okay. The anger for postpartum depression, I would say, is one that people don't associate with being depressed, but is often like a telltale sign. So you'll hear it like mom rage, feeling like really just aggravated, irritated all the time. Maybe if they're acting it out towards their spouse or towards their other children, feeling frustrated with people who are trying to help, just almost like you're going to crawl out of your skin. Oftentimes that can be associated with the postpartum depression. And it's this underlying experience that I feel helpless, feeling hopeless. And this is far outside that 2-week window. So this is maybe 6, 8, 10 weeks down the road, and we're still feeling this way. Things aren't getting better. We're not feeling motivated. We have a time to take care of ourselves and take a shower, but we just don't want to. And then maybe in a more extreme case, I don't really want to hold my baby. I think I'll let my mom hold her again. No, that's okay. You don't have to pass her back to me. I'm okay. I'm okay here. And it's not coming from a place of lack of love. It's coming often from a place of self-preservation and not feeling like your own self at that point. And so that is less clinical, but I think more paints the picture, broad brushstrokes of maybe what postpartum depression can look like in a new mom.
That is really helpful to hear the description. I think the examples, then I'm just thinking of like, yeah, I definitely found myself in that place. And I think it's helpful too to hear about the hormonal changes, because the thing is, like, this is complex. And I know for myself, like I would try to be like, oh, what's the one thing? Like there's one thing that is off or wrong that needs to be fixed, when it's very complex. Like it's oftentimes multiple things. So considering the biological component, where like biologically, physiologically, our bodies are changing and we cannot control that. There's no amount of thinking our way through and willing our way through that can force a change of what's happening in our bodies. And I think that was a very confusing thing for myself, of like, wait, what? Like I thought I could just, think my way through this, or like change my attitude, or it's a mindset problem. It's actually, this element of it is out of my control.
Totally. And that's such a hard thing to reconcile if you're already feeling helpless, because you're like, well, what do you mean? This feels like it's happening to me versus something that I can maybe change. And it doesn't mean you can't get better. There's not things that we can do, but I think recognizing this isn't my fault. And that goes back to the faith piece, right? Of, well, like, just cast your anxieties on the Lord because he cares for you. Absolutely. That is so true. And hormonally, what's happening in my body has nothing to do with me not trusting the Lord. And everything to do with physiologically what's happening after I had the baby. The other wild card here is the sleep deprivation.
Yes.
Everybody responds to that differently. Every baby is different. And that is another underrated but so important piece that I like to talk about with new moms. So for example, if a mom is presenting with some postpartum depression, I'm asking about her sleep. I'm asking about who's helping her in the middle of the night. And that's one of the first things we're going to address before we're going to talk about maybe some of the bigger things. Because if she doesn't have help and support at night, if she's not getting longer stretches so that her brain can go through that REM cycle and really start to feel and experience something different during the day, then some of these symptoms aren't going to necessarily improve and get better. And I've even had it where some moms, they start sleeping better, or they get longer chunks, or they're like, hey, spouse or mom, can you bottle feed? And I'm going to sleep for 6 hours. They come back and they're like, I feel so much better. Not to say that that's always secure, but to your point, it's so multifaceted. It's not a quick fix.
Right. And I'm so glad that you brought up the point with the sleep deprivation, because before I had my son, I was pregnant with him. I was like, I don't know, 2 months out from having him. And I had talked to my doctor. I was like, I am so scared, because I knew I was prone to depression. And I was like, what do I do to help this not come back, basically? And because I would hear all the time of postpartum depression. And one of the things he said was you have to get sleep. I was like, how in the world are you expecting me to get sleep when they have to eat every 2 hours? And so he made a great point. He's like, look, if you have your husband or your mom that's coming to help, as soon as you're done feeding the baby, hand the baby off and go straight to bed. And just see, having that extra help and support. But he was just saying, foundationally. And I think it's such a process of working through to see, what is it that my body is needing? What is it that my brain is needing? What is it? Because it's not a prescription of a one size fits all. However, there's these basic needs that we do have as humans to varying degrees. So it's just addressing each of those and seeing how much that helps, and being okay, where are we at now? Now that I'm able to get that much more sleep, how much better do I feel from that?
Yes.
And then what else from there may I be needing? Because probably still that alone, there's a lot as humans, as moms, we have a lot of needs. That's part of how God made us. So it's not we can just cure it all with one thing, but it's just, I think, this building. And I feel we get our bodies go through this whole transition and a breakdown, if you will, to be built back up.
Oh, I love that picture. I think I think you come to the end of yourself after giving birth, regardless of how your birth went or the birth plan or the way you delivered. It is an ending and a beginning. And so oftentimes we're conditioned to think that birth is the finish line, but in a lot of ways it's the start of a whole nother marathon that is postpartum. And we're often really ill-equipped for that, because whether it be our medical provider or our friends or social media, just get this baby out, just get this baby out. And when they're here, we'll take the cute newborn pictures, and we'll have all of the items from our registry, and we'll have the visitors come in, and I'll have my body back, and I'll be able to do X, Y, or Z. There's all of these expectations. Sometimes these expectations can lead to the symptoms of postpartum anxiety or depression, because when they're not met, then we start to feel well, who am I? And will I ever get to feel like myself again? Will I ever feel like my body is my own? I didn't anticipate this baby waking up every hour, an hour to hour and a half. I was told that I would get a 3-hour stretch. I've yet to get that. That's something I hear a lot, is the expectations of this is how I thought it was going to be versus this is how it is. And not having the space, the margin, or the support to be able to reconcile those two things, and feeling rushed to just, you've had the baby and now everyone's focused on the baby. They're asking about milestones. They're asking, is she 6 weeks, 10 weeks now? And a lot of new moms feel forgotten. I always like to reframe it, and whether it be in session or just talking with postpartum moms, when they say my baby's 12 weeks now or 13 weeks. And I'm like, and that means that you're 3 months postpartum? And they're like, oh yeah, I guess I am. Because even that shift of not thinking about, and this is how fresh you are after having just given birth.
What a perspective shift to consider, because the whole transition, I feel like there's this wrestling of what you're describing. It's almost this wrestling of trying to reach back and go back and be like, hold on, I need to go back and grab my former life, like the way things worked before, and then pull them into motherhood, when really then we kind of are hit with this reality of like, but these things don't fit like they used to. Like, it's not working in my life the way they used to. So it's navigating a brand new path forward. And really there can be that identity crisis. There's this, because there's so much of an outpouring of you, that it's easy to feel like, well, who the heck am I now? Because I don't even have the space or time to fill myself back up. Like, I don't know where she went. Who is she? Where'd she go? And so to be able to like, it's very challenging to navigate the new way forward, because you now have, like, how I felt was just these crazy demands. Like, that's the word I would use, is like demand, demand, demand. The baby's crying, demanding milk. Baby's crying, like demanding to be held. And like, where's the space? Where's the support? Like, to help me come back to becoming me again, like, and I'm more whole, but like, it's a new version of me that I've never experienced before. And the biggest surprise, like, I have continuously, I mean, my kids are almost 4 and 6, continuously, my biggest shock is the degree of support I've needed. Like, and it's continuous, like at these different stages, and even just going through different life events or health challenges, it has completely required way more support than I ever could have foreseen, expected. And with getting that support, that has required asking for help, which has had a ton of internal wrestling, because it's required humility to ask for help and admit, I can't do this. And for me, as somebody who is used to like being the strong one and like, I can do it, there's like, I was over responsible. I would, oldest child, like typical what you would think, and just very overly responsible, very high functioning, codependent. And so then to have like a break of just realizing I can't, I have new severe limits I've never experienced before, and I need help. Like, I felt like I was like choking in my throat. Like I was choking the words out to try and just admit I needed help,
Yeah. Yes.
So much fear that comes on the back end of that, of like, will I face resistance? Will I actually be able to get the help I need? Will they, like, all of that, like the fear of rejection, just there's so much that comes from it. But that has been the biggest shock in motherhood, is like, holy smokes, I have needed so much help and support.
I can so relate to that, as someone who also is, my dad described me as fiercely independent.
Yes.
From an early age. And I see it in my middle child, who's my only girl, very much like me in that I can do it all by my big girl self. And I'm like, I get it. I get it. There is some empowerment there. And there's also, like you touched on, this fear of like, I'm a little afraid to ask for help, because what if I don't get the need met?
Exactly.
And what does that say about me that I need help? Right. And I think culturally, not to blame this all on culture, but I think to give credit where credit is due, there is this idea in the Western world that we are supposed to have our first solo Target trip be a milestone with our 2-week, 3-week-old. And we did it, and we got here, and there is a sense of accomplishment in it, but it only counts if we did it by ourselves and we didn't need help. And maybe the car ride there was awful, and maybe we're still in diapers ourselves, but like, we did the thing, and that's what's celebrated. It's not celebrated asking for your meal train to be extended.
Yes.
It's not celebrated saying, I don't think I'm actually ready to go back to work with my maternity leave ending, and I think I'm going to need some additional support. It's not celebrated asking a friend to come sit up with your baby so you can sleep, because you're so sleep deprived to the point where you are exhibiting signs of postpartum depression and rage. That's not celebrated, and it's not shared or talked about.
Yes, exactly. That's so true. I just keep, like, I don't know, I keep thinking about how in our culture, because we are so hyper individualistic, where it's like, look at me and what I've accomplished. And it's sad because we don't realize the weight and the pressure that is then being put on, where we as the moms get like continuously pushed down, pulled down. We are like drowning. And then it's like we don't realize either that how that affects our kids. And yet what is required to take better care of ourselves is inviting other people in. And because our culture is so individualistic, it's not set up for support. Like how I have felt, it's just very much figuring it out on my own. Like being like, wow, I have to like, first of all, you figure out what am I feeling? Those feelings are connected to needs. What am I needing? And then where do I get the need met? Because it's really not established. Like there's not this pre-existing established support system besides like, well, you can go drop into a daycare, or you can go over here to a Mother's Day Out program, or like if your kids are old enough to go to school, like those are that's like one thing when we really need so much more. So it's been this whole process of trying to build it out, but very much, it feels like trailblazing. Like this is not a trail that's been like well worn that I can easily go down. I'm just trying to figure this out, and it's been trial and error. So it's like, I think that this is what I need. I'm going to try it, and it either was, or it was close, or it wasn't, and then I have to try something else, which requires a lot of brain power and the space to think, the time to like, which is very difficult in early motherhood. And when you have babies and you have toddlers, and it is just very challenging. So I think it's really neat that you are doing the work that you're doing. And I want to ask you, before we get to the resources and the support that you do offer moms, because it is so needed. Before we get to that, I would love to hear what you have seen as far as clients you've worked with, and really the transformation that you have seen as they have navigated, whether it's postpartum depression or anxiety, and being able to really turn a corner, which I would assume, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, like takes work. So like in doing some of the work that you've seen, like what does that look like to be able to turn a corner and really get to the other side? Because you do have to go through this. Like what if you could just share a story or something that comes to mind of a client you've worked with, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will do a composite version just to protect confidentiality and things like that. But a narrative that I see often and applies to multiple women that I've worked with for sure when it comes to their postpartum journeys. There was a woman who experienced, I would describe as like debilitating anxiety, like really hard to leave her house, really impeding on daily life activities, really hard to function, but functioning enough to where maybe only it was her spouse that could really see how bad she was struggling. I say this a lot. I think husbands are some unsung heroes because there's this fear of, I don't want this other mom to think that I'm not doing a good job, or that I don't enjoy motherhood, or just think there's something wrong with me. So I'm not going to tell any of my girlfriends, but my husband's about to get it all. He's about to hear exactly how I'm feeling, every intrusive thought. He's going to hear all the scary things that are happening in my brain, and just how bad I feel. And so it was him who actually encouraged her, like, hey, maybe you need to start working with a counselor. Maybe you need to see someone. And again, this happens frequently, where they're like, I can't help you. I don't know how to help you. And so working with her and just uncovering all that she had been holding and hiding out of that fear, that self-protection. I don't feel like anybody is going to care, and I don't feel like anybody else is going through this. I feel like I'm alone. The biggest thing for her was, after working through a treatment plan, doing some work around the intrusive thoughts, being able to establish sleep first and foremost, because she was horribly sleep deprived, and being able to let go of some of that control around having things done her way, because that was part of what was helping her not feel as anxious. If I can just do everything, then I know it's being done the way I want it to. And if that means I'm up every 2 hours and not getting any sleep, at least I have that solace. And so having that conversation of, that's a short-term plan, not a long-term plan. And what happens when you burn out because you're so exhausted? And then who gets to care for your baby? You're going to need help, right? But now it doesn't feel like it's your choice. And that feels even worse. Who can we invite in to your bubble to help with getting some help when it comes to sleep? How can we let go of some of that control? And can we get desensitized to the need that we always have to be in control? Can we see that there's some areas where we're not in control? And maybe that's okay. Maybe not being in control doesn't mean we're not safe. And sometimes that gets paired in people's brains. And so that was the early work. But long term, what ended up being really like the turning point for her, and this ties in perfectly to like the community needing for support, is that I can't be her friend because I'm her therapist, right? I could do great work with her. She did great work in working her treatment plan and getting better, seeing a reduction in symptoms, getting that support at home with helping with her baby, recognizing not every thought is a true thought or a helpful thought. And she's still processing motherhood with me every week. And I'm like, you need someone who's in your life, right? You need somebody who can do life with you. You need someone for the in-between moments. You need someone who you can call and ask to go to a play date with after work, or maybe you guys share a meal when your husbands are out of town working. That is the next step. You need a village. And part of the reason why this was so hard is because she did not have parents that were involved. And oftentimes I think we assume the best way to care for our children, if it's not us, if we have a healthy relationship with our parents, is it's got to be family. And that's okay. But if it's not family, now we have to use daycare or some other like hired help. And that feels bad. That feels wrong. That should only be used if we're working and we're making money. And if we're not making money while have our child in childcare, then somehow that's me not being a good mom. Lots of those thoughts. And so talking even through, like, sometimes you have a village that is family. Sometimes you have a village that is friends. Sometimes you have a village that is paid help. Sometimes it's a combination of all three. But the need for a village is still the same. Like, we're created and wired for community and connection, and especially in motherhood, was not meant to be done alone or in isolation. And so that was part of what led me to create a support group outside of my counseling practice, leading it as a therapist, but not doing group therapy, to be able to create a structured and safe place for women who are struggling with their mental health, who are believers, who are not wanting to be talked out of their faith. They're wanting that peace to be honored in their life, but they're also not wanting to have things over spiritualized. Or be given permission to spiritually bypass their experience, and really just needing someone to sit in it with them, like we were talking about earlier. But at the time, didn't have something like that. And so I suggested, what about the gym? What about joining the gym with childcare, being able to meet other moms that way? What about story time? What about doing parks? What about doing like a mom's group? Whether it be at your local church or another organization, and thinking through, like, how can we start to build this community of friendship for you? Does it make sense for you sometimes to have some paid help so that you can take care of yourself? And is that worth it? Is that important? And if you don't feel like it's important, then why? And working through those things. So that was, I would say, like her turning the corner, is how do I take all the things that I've gained in therapy and then use them in real time in my daily life? And part of that is having a support system to carry me through, because the therapist relationship is not meant to do that.
Right. Oh my gosh, it's so good. That's a huge, huge piece that I haven't heard anyone speak to it like that, where it's not one replacing the other, but like both have a purpose. It's making me think of, this was probably a couple years ago, but I remember I was sitting in the car and I was feeling really down, like just depressed feelings. And I remember thinking, oh yeah, I see my therapist in a week and a half. Okay, I'll talk to her about it then. And I thought in that moment, why would I wait a week and a half? This is heavy. That's a lot to hold to myself for a week and a half. And that thought led me to be like, who can I share this with in my life? And there's 3 close friends in my life that I asked them, I said, hey, I want to practice sharing what I'm feeling regularly. My goal would be daily, but I don't know if it's realistic. But like most days of the week, I just need to share in a space for you to just like hold it, where I don't want to feel judged or like have advice giving, like any of that. And I just straight up asked them, I was like, will you be that person for me? I need to practice this. And they all three are like, yes, absolutely. And so the way I've been doing it primarily is through voice memos. It's just like, okay, as I'm driving, and I just will share what's going on, what I'm feeling, and through a voice memo. And then it's been really neat to have that back and forth with these friends. And to your point, like, it's been such a relief to find those friends that I can share in the day to day to those depths of like what is really going on, where it's like, this is what I'm really feeling. Here's the thoughts I'm having. This is how like pissed I am, like whatever it is, here's what happened. And so it's like getting to be able to have that, just like the integration of like, hey, in my daily life, I do have people I can go to, and we've been practicing this. Like I've been practicing, they've been practicing, and we have learned and been learning how to hold space for each other. In addition to, I still see my therapist every other week. Like I'm still committed to that, but what a difference to have. It's just like a layering effect.
Yes.
Again, that additional support. And I think it's a process. It's like building these things out is a process. And if we can stay in the process, we do get to experience the fruit and the benefits that's on the other side. It's just hard. And like you said earlier, it doesn't mean it's complicated. It's hard. Like it's not easy to do in the midst of the roles that we play as a mom and having kids who need so much from us, but like finding those like little windows, or believing like we are worth it enough. Or at least for me, it started with like, I want better for my kids. So I'm going to go do this. But it's so worth it on the other side. So I appreciate you sharing that story. So thank you. And if you can just share a little bit more of where people can connect with you to learn more, if they would like interested in joining the support group. Oh my gosh, like, it's fantastic you have this. So I would love to hear where people can find you.
Yeah, definitely. So right now I'm most active on my email list. So they can go to my website, joyfulmamamentalwellness.com, and sign up for the email list, share reflections, oftentimes thoughts like we just explored today, encouragement for Christian postpartum women who just are feeling like they're in the thick of it and are needing that encouragement, going straight to their inbox. It also serves as the wait list for the next opportunity to open up the support group that I started, which is completely online. It's called Known Motherhood. And it's meant to meet women exactly where they are at. And it's kind of beautiful how it's woven together our conversation today, and just proving the point of you're not meant to mother alone. Specifically in postpartum, you're so vulnerable. There's so many opportunities for your mental health to have areas of struggle. And so being able to do that in community with other women who are also struggling, who don't have it all together, who aren't looking to be fixed or judged, who are wanting to share in a space that's safe to do that. And then also having someone who's able to facilitate this conversation from a mental health perspective, from a Christian perspective, so that you have some tools. It's a great, what we call like adjunct service. So if you're already in therapy, it's a great standalone thing that can go alongside of that, but you certainly don't have to be in therapy to join. Anyone's welcome. It's just not a substitute for working with an individual counselor to work that treatment plan like I was talking about. So the wait list is there for when we open it again, hopefully in the next couple months. And then I'm also active a little bit on Instagram and TikTok, so people can definitely find me there. There was one other thing that you said though, and I keep thinking on it, so I'm like, maybe I should share it. When you're talking about this turning point and the change, and yes, her getting plugged into community outside of counseling and being able to like live in real time. And I love how you were doing that too with your friends of sharing like, hey, I'm gonna be honest and real with you, and I'm gonna do that through voice memos because listen, that's what we have time for these days.
Yes.
Trying to find the time on the phone can be really hard. So I think that's a beautiful practical way of how to live that out. I think also it is not waiting to feel differently before you do something different. And oftentimes we want to feel better to then maybe tell someone that we were struggling because now we're past it, or maybe to just try something different and new. And I don't think this comes from a place of pride most of the time. I think it comes from a place of self-preservation. You just want to hold on hold on until the dust settles, and then, okay, let me figure out something else. But oftentimes that's not how change works.
Yes.
And so for the story that I was sharing with her, there was a lot of courage that had to be practiced. And I don't feel like I'm ready to do this thing, or this has been the thing that's worked well for me, having control over the sleep when it comes to I'm the one that feeds the baby and I'm the one that wakes up with the baby. Letting some of that go feels foreign. I don't feel like that's what I want to do here.
Yeah.
And I can see how I need to do something different in order to experience something different. And I think that's where change is born, step by step, is practicing that level of courage.
Yes, it's like doing it, being willing to do it messy and be in the mess, and not, just like you're saying, not wait for us. It could be perfection or whatnot. Like, and that's been a big, big thing I've had to wrestle with too, is struggling to feel like, in a way, like I have to perform. And I think that's a part of like being in the role of a mom, like, and we're trying to figure out what the heck this means. Like, who and what am I supposed to do? Which, when we think in those ways, it really can become that performance or like a show or perfect. It just feeds these layers of unhealth where then we hide, and we don't feel like, you just said, in real time, in the moment, we can share. We feel like we have to wait till we get to this point, but the longer we wait, the longer it tends to take, and we don't get the help we desperately need it. And it's just like shortening that time. But yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up. That's so big. And yeah, just learning like to do motherhood messy and in the middle of the mud, and like, here I am.
Yes.
I got mud on my face and it's not pretty, but here it is.
Yeah. And oftentimes vulnerability, I think, breeds vulnerability for others. Of course, you're going to have people who may look at that and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she said that, or she admitted that. And that's probably not your people, right?
Yes.
But there's going to be other women who are like, I love that she just said that. I feel that way too, or I have felt similarly in the past. And maybe next time I'm struggling, maybe I'm not going to wait for it to get so bad before I then say something, because she went first and she like led in that vulnerability. So that's another way to build true, authentic social support in this season.
Oh my gosh, so good. I feel like you just got to share so many great practical pieces and things that can be done, which I think can be missed, where it's very theoretical, or you just hear this and you're like, yeah, that sounds great, but how the heck do I put this into my daily life? I feel like what you just shared today is, there's a lot of practical elements that any moms listening can really apply today, right away. Just one thing. There's many that they could choose from to pick one thing and try it out. So thank you so much, Emma, for being here and just being willing to share. I love, 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 love the work that you're doing. I'm so glad you've created a space and a community really to support women, especially in postpartum and these very difficult seasons where there's a lot of suffering in silence and they don't have to. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been wonderful talking to you. So, like, such an easy conversation. I feel like we could keep talking forever, but
I know.
I appreciate the time. Totally.
Oh.
It's been so good.
Well, thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm very excited for this to come out. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And remember that you're not alone. Thanks so much for listening, friend. I cannot wait to talk with you next time. Thanks for listening to Let's Get Real. If you've been feeling stretched thin, stuck in survival mode, or like you've lost yourself in motherhood, I made something just for you. It's called the Overwhelmed Mom's Guide, and it's totally free. Inside, I walk you through simple steps to help you reconnect with who you are, find a bit more breathing room in your day, and start to feel like you again. You can grab it now. Just click the link in the show notes. You don't have to keep doing this alone. Let's take the next step together.